Not every artifact fits the story we tell about the past. Some whisper through cracks in stone and charred scrolls, carved in symbols we no longer understand. They surface in tombs, temples, or layers of ash. Too strange to ignore, too complex to explain. A star map appears on a ceiling thousands of years ahead of its time. A burnt scroll reveals sacred text, even though it was never unrolled. Ancient bones show human features, yet belong to no known species. These aren't myths. They're real, unearthed, and still resisting our best attempts to make sense of them. Each of these 7 artifacts raises a question history can't yet answer. Who built them? What knowledge have we forgotten? And why were so many secrets left in silence? This isn't a story of what we do know. It's a story of what we don't. And the search begins right now. What if a sacred text, sealed shut by fire for over 1,000 years, could speak again, without ever being opened? In 1970, archaeologists digging through the ruins of an ancient synagogue at En-Gedi, an oasis village near the Dead Sea in Israel, discovered a small, charred lump buried in the debris. The synagogue, dating to around the 6th century CE, had suffered a devastating fire that left its stonework blackened and its contents destroyed. Among the remains was a scroll so carbonized it looked like nothing more than a lump of coal. Any attempt to physically unroll it would have instantly turned it to dust. And so for decades it was stored in silence, its contents unknown, its voice lost. But in 2015, technology caught up to mystery. A team of researchers led by Brent Seals at the University of Kentucky used a technique known as virtual unwrapping, combining micro-CT scans with complex 3D algorithms to peer inside the charred remains without ever disturbing them. The scans digitally reconstructed the scroll's internal layers, allowing researchers to flatten them and visualize the ink trapped inside. What they found was astonishing. The first 8 verses of the Book of Leviticus, written in ancient Hebrew. Despite the destruction, the text was perfectly legible. Even more remarkably, the writing style closely matched that of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which date back several centuries earlier. This made the En-Gedi scroll the oldest biblical scroll ever found in a synagogue's holy ark, and the earliest example of a Torah text identical to the Masoretic tradition, the standardized Hebrew Bible used today. This discovery didn't just offer historical confirmation, it rewrote the timeline of biblical textual consistency. The En-Gedi scroll showed that the version of Leviticus in use over 1,500 years ago was nearly identical to the version read in synagogues today. A stunning revelation for scholars of religious history and textual transmission. But the scroll's survival raises more questions than it answers. Why was such a valuable object left to burn? Was it hidden during a time of invasion, perhaps by the Byzantines, Sassanids, or during the early Islamic expansion? Or was it caught in a fire sparked by accident or natural disaster? The scroll was found in the Holy Ark, the holiest part of the synagogue, suggesting it had been placed there deliberately. But for what purpose? Ritual use, protection, or concealment? We still don't know. Equally puzzling is the scroll's condition. Unlike most ancient manuscripts, it wasn't copied or transmitted. It's the original artifact, preserved by destruction. Its blackened exterior, fused into a fragile mass, gave it the appearance of death. Yet within, the words endured untouched, as if sealed for future eyes. The En-Gedi scroll represents more than a triumph of science. It's a paradox made real. Destroyed yet intact, unreadable yet fully legible. A sacred voice silenced by fire, revived by light and code. And while this scroll speaks through algorithms and ashes, the next mystery is far older, painted not in ink but on stone, and speaking in stars that still defy our understanding. Beneath the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, hidden near the valley's edge, lies the unfinished tomb of a man who rose from humble origins to wield unprecedented power in one of history's most enduring civilizations. His name was Senenmut, and though he was neither pharaoh nor priest, he was entrusted with constructing the great mortuary temple of Queen Hatshepsut and overseeing vast royal projects during Egypt's 18th dynasty. But inside his private tomb, designated TT353, archaeologists discovered something far stranger than architectural plans or funerary art. Painted on the ceiling was a celestial map, the oldest known astronomical representation in Egypt, dating to around 1470 BCE. At first glance, the ceiling seems to follow familiar Egyptian patterns, rows of deities in solar boats, decans representing 10-day star periods, lunar phases, and constellations stretching across the sky. Yet one section stands out and remains unexplained. It depicts a rare planetary conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, and Venus, aligned in a way that doesn't match any known configuration from Senenmut's lifetime. Astronomers attempting to reconstruct the sky of the 15th century BCE using modern star mapping software have failed to find a match. Some suggest the event may have occurred thousands of years earlier, or later. Others argue the alignment may not be astronomical at all, but symbolic. But if so, what was it meant to represent? And why place it in a tomb? The western part of the ceiling is dedicated to lunar cycles, showing the phases of the moon and the passage of hours during the night. The eastern half traces the sun's journey through the sky, marked by star deities. These dual panels aren't merely decorative. They indicate an advanced understanding of celestial movement, timekeeping, and cosmology. Inscriptions link the stars to the afterlife, suggesting that the night sky was not just a clock, but a divine roadmap for the soul. Senenmut held over 80 titles, including Overseer of the Works of the King, Chief Steward of the God's Wife, and Tutor to the King's Daughter. Yet his rise to power is unmatched by others of non-royal blood. Some Egyptologists speculate he may have had access to sacred or scientific knowledge, usually reserved for the priesthood. Others suggest he was part of a deeper intellectual tradition, one now lost. His tomb, curiously, was abandoned unfinished. Despite its elaborate plan and exceptional ceiling, Senenmut was never interred there. No remains were found, no burial equipment. The chambers were sealed but empty. Why construction stopped remains unclear. Was it a political fall from grace, a sudden death, or something more clandestine? Some even propose that the ceiling was a kind of esoteric diagram, a celestial code not meant for the living, but for initiates, those trained to read the heavens as sacred text. The inclusion of planetary alignments that don't correspond to known skies has led fringe theorists to suggest connections to earlier lost civilizations or encoded prophecies. Though unproven, the ceiling continues to resist definitive interpretation. Unlike most tombs, which focus on lineage, judgment, and resurrection, Senenmut's sky-oriented design turns our gaze upward to a universe carefully mapped, but only partly understood. What knowledge was once common enough to paint on a tomb, but is now lost to us? And if the stars once held secrets of time, fate, or the afterlife, perhaps the next mystery, emerging from a cave in Yunnan province, asks something even more unsettling. Did the past hide not just knowledge, but other kinds of humans entirely? In the limestone highlands of Yunnan province, southern China, a discovery in a small cave shook the foundations of human evolutionary theory. It wasn't a lost city or a buried monument. It was bones, ancient, weathered, and strangely unfamiliar. The site, known as Red Deer Cave or Maludong, was excavated in 1989, but it wasn't until decades later in 2012 that researchers published findings that sparked international debate. Inside the cave were partial skulls, femurs, jaws, and other remains that seemed to belong to no known species. Dated to just 14,000 to 17,000 years ago, the bones weren't from Homo erectus or Neanderthals. They weren't even from Homo sapiens, at least not entirely. The individuals had thick skull bones, prominent brow ridges, and flat faces, traits common in more ancient hominins. But they also had modern brain sizes and relatively short, broad bodies. Their lower jaws lacked chins. The mix of archaic and modern features was unlike anything seen before. These people didn't fit into any known evolutionary line. Named the Red Deer Cave people after the animal remains found alongside them, which suggests they hunted and cooked red deer on site. The individuals posed a staggering question. Could an archaic human species have survived in isolated pockets while Homo sapiens spread across the globe? Some scientists proposed they were a previously unknown species, possibly descended from an early migration of hominins into East Asia that had remained genetically isolated. Others argued they were modern humans with unusual traits, perhaps a regional variant. A third theory speculated they could be hybrids between modern humans and a now extinct archaic group. Complicating the debate, genetic material has been difficult to extract from the remains. Without DNA, researchers are left with skeletal clues, fragments of faces, teeth, and limb proportions that hint at something different, but stop short of confirmation. In paleoanthropology, morphology can suggest, but not definitively prove, identity. Their tools and cultural signs were minimal, offering no clear clues to language, art, or burial practices. But their presence at such a recent date challenges long-held assumptions about the timeline of human dominance. If another hominin species did survive into the late Ice Age, what happened to them? Were they outcompeted, absorbed genetically, or did they simply vanish into history without a trace? The Red Deer Cave people remind us that the human story is not linear. It's a web, tangled, overlapping, and filled with vanished chapters. And just as these bones speak to the fragility of identity, the next artifact speaks in stone, not about a species, but a woman whose image has endured for millennia, carved in perfect stillness with no clear purpose. No other sculpture from ancient Iberia has sparked more debate or more fascination than the Dama de Elche. Discovered by chance in 1897 on the l'Alcúdia estate near Elche in southeastern Spain, the figure was unearthed by workers clearing a field among the scattered ruins of an ancient Iberian settlement. At first, it appeared to be just another piece of buried rubble, but what rose from the soil was a limestone bust of a woman, perfectly preserved and astonishingly lifelike. Carved around the 4th century BCE, possibly earlier, the bust stands out not only for its realism, but for its striking features: finely modeled lips, sharply defined cheekbones, and an elaborate headdress consisting of 2 large circular coils flanking her face, believed to represent either ceremonial attire or a status symbol. The details of her garment, jewelry, and the precision of the carving are so advanced that some early scholars questioned whether it could even be Iberian in origin. The sculpture was soon named the Dama de Elche, and from the beginning she defied classification. Her style seemed too refined for local Iberian art, leading many to believe she was influenced by, or perhaps created by, Phoenician, Greek, or even Carthaginian artisans, all of whom were known to trade and settle along the Mediterranean coast of Iberia. Others argue she reflects a uniquely Iberian aesthetic, a glimpse into a sophisticated local culture whose artifacts were lost or yet to be discovered. Her purpose remains equally enigmatic. In 1948, an analysis revealed a hollow cavity at the back of her neck, suggesting she may have served as a funerary urn, possibly to hold cremated remains. If true, she wasn't just a sculpture, but part of a ritual, intimately tied to death and memory. This interpretation positions her as more than a noblewoman or deity. She could have been a spiritual intermediary or a vessel of ancestral reverence. Over time, the Dama became a national symbol of pre-Roman Iberian identity, and her image has appeared in everything from museum exhibits to postage stamps. Yet key questions persist. Was she a portrait of a real individual or a symbolic representation of an idealized figure? If she held ashes, whose remains did she guard? Why does no similar statue exist elsewhere in the region? The site where she was found has since yielded other Iberian ruins, including walls, coins, and fragments of pottery, but none match the refinement or mystery of the Dama herself. She stands alone, both in craftsmanship and cultural ambiguity, and as her gaze remains frozen in limestone, offering no answers, our next mystery lies not in sculpture, but in stone of another kind. A circular pyramid swallowed by lava, rising from the forgotten heart of ancient Mesoamerica. Among the traffic-clogged avenues of modern-day Mexico City, few would guess that beneath the layers of asphalt and concrete lies the remains of one of Mesoamerica's earliest urban centers, a site that predates the Aztecs, the Maya, and even Teotihuacan. Its name is Cuicuilco, and at its heart stands a structure unlike any other pyramid in the region, massive, circular, and partly buried beneath a hardened flow of volcanic lava. The Cuicuilco Pyramid, located near Lake Texcoco's former shores, is estimated to have been built between 800 BCE and 600 BCE, making it one of the oldest known ceremonial centers in central Mexico. The structure, over 20 meters tall and 110 meters in diameter, was constructed with layered volcanic stone and earth, arranged in a circular platform topped with a now ruined temple. Unlike the stepped rectangular pyramids found in later Mesoamerican cultures, Cuicuilco's rounded shape is unique, suggesting either a distinct cultural tradition or a long-lost architectural influence. When the Zittel volcano erupted sometime around 245–315 CE, it unleashed a wave of lava that buried much of Cuicuilco under several meters of molten rock. The city was largely abandoned, and much of its history, culture, and influence vanished beneath the hardened basalt. It is only through modern excavations that archaeologists have begun to piece together what this city once was and what it might have represented. Artifacts found at the site suggest a sophisticated society. Tools, ceramics, and sculptures point to complex rituals and trade networks. The layout of the city, with its ceremonial spaces, altars, and large plazas, indicates organized urban planning, possibly even a centralized political structure. Some have speculated that Cuicuilco was the first major city in the Valley of Mexico, its design influencing later cultures long after it was buried. The circular shape of the pyramid has invited theories that stretch beyond archaeology. Some see it as a solar observatory, aligned with astronomical events. Others view it as a symbol of cyclical time, a structure embodying a worldview distinct from the later linear cosmology of the Maya or Aztec. More fringe theorists have speculated on external influences, citing architectural similarities to South American or even Old World cultures, though no conclusive evidence supports these ideas. Even today, the pyramid's full extent remains unknown. Much of it still lies under lava fields, and further excavation is limited by the surrounding urban sprawl. It remains a partial shadow of what it once was, preserved by destruction. What civilization built this temple? How did they rise to such prominence, only to vanish so completely that even their name is lost to history? And if Cuicuilco had not been buried in fire, would the Valley of Mexico's dominant power have taken a different form? As we leave behind this forgotten city of stone and ash, our next mystery leads us to ancient Athens, where a sacred shrine once marked the center of the classical world, only to vanish beneath the very streets it once defined. In the heart of classical Athens, there once stood a place considered the very center of the city, both spiritually and geographically. It was not a palace or a fortress, but a humble-looking structure known as the altar of the 12 gods, mentioned in ancient texts, used in rituals, and even referenced in legal documents. This site was so central that distances across Attica were measured from its foundation. Yet today, its exact location has vanished beneath the city it once defined. The altar was established in 522 BCE during the archonship of Pisistratus the Younger, a member of Athens's powerful Pisistratid dynasty. It was dedicated to the 12 major Olympian deities: Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hermes, and either Hestia or Dionysus. While temples honoring individual gods were common, this altar served as a unifying sacred space, symbolizing the collective divine order of the cosmos. Located in the northwest corner of the Athenian Agora, the altar played a significant role in the city's civic and religious life. It functioned as a place of asylum, a refuge for those seeking protection under divine law. It was also a starting point for processions, and a reference from which all distances from Athens were measured, akin to a spiritual kilometer zero. Though referenced often in ancient sources, by Herodotus, Thucydides, and Pausanias, no large temple was ever built over it. Instead, it remained an open-air altar, accessible to all, making its loss all the more baffling. For centuries, the altar's precise location remained a matter of scholarly speculation. Then, in 1891, excavations by the German Archaeological Institute near the Eleusinion, a sanctuary to Demeter, uncovered a rectangular enclosure with inscriptions bearing dedications to the 12 gods. This modest ruin was tentatively identified as the altar, but its position raised new problems. It didn't align perfectly with classical accounts. Other scholars proposed alternate sites beneath the modern urban landscape, especially in areas inaccessible due to roads and railways. One of the leading theories today is that the altar lies beneath the modern Athens-Piraeus railway line, which cuts through the ancient agora. A small portion may have been unearthed during construction, only to be reburied or built over. Ironically, the very progress that Athens once symbolized may have erased one of its earliest and most important spiritual landmarks. Why such a foundational structure was never more permanently enshrined remains a mystery. Did its simplicity reflect humility before the gods, or was it simply intended to be accessible, more space than monument? And how did a site so central, measured, revered, and protected, become obscured by time and traffic? The altar of the 12 gods is a reminder that not all sacred places are lost to war or conquest. Some are simply paved over, buried beneath centuries of forgetfulness and stone. And as we leave behind a vanished altar that once grounded a civilization, we arrive at one final mystery, a tomb rising from the desert, vast and empty, built by unknown hands who left no words behind. Amid the dry expanse of the Al Ain oasis in the United Arab Emirates, a structure rises from the desert, circular and immense. Built from massive stone blocks and decorated with faint carvings of human and animal figures, the Hili Grand Tomb stands as one of the most imposing prehistoric monuments in the Arabian Peninsula. And yet, no written record, no known name, no preserved voice tells us who built it or why. Constructed during the early Bronze Age, around 2500 BCE, the tomb is part of the larger Hili Archaeological Park, a complex of settlements, towers, and burial structures that once formed the heart of the Ulmannar culture. This ancient society flourished in southeastern Arabia, trading copper, stone, and goods with Mesopotamia, Iran, and the Indus Valley. But while we know their trade routes and the reach of their influence, we know almost nothing about their beliefs, social structures, or language. The tomb itself is remarkable in size and engineering. It measures about 12 meters in diameter and stands over 4 meters tall, made of ashlar masonry, large, precisely cut stones fitted together without mortar. Its internal chambers are arranged to house multiple individuals, suggesting communal or elite burials. The exterior once bore carved reliefs of ibexes, oryxes, and human figures, hinting at symbolic meaning, but their interpretation remains uncertain. Unlike Egyptian tombs of the same era, which are dense with hieroglyphs and funerary texts, the Hili Grand Tomb is silent. No inscriptions, no murals, no grave goods elaborate enough to explain its occupants' roles. Even skeletal remains found inside have yielded limited clues. Were they leaders, priests, ancestors worshipped through generations? The scale and sophistication of the tomb suggest a society with strong social organization and complex spiritual beliefs. Its central placement within the Hili settlement implies ritual importance, perhaps serving as both a funerary site and a ceremonial focal point. But without texts or myths, all theories remain speculative. Some archaeologists believe the tomb was part of a broader cult of the dead, reflecting shared memory across extended families or clans. Others see it as a political marker, a monument asserting control over land, water, or trade routes. A few go further, proposing that the Hili complex hints at a now-lost cultural ideology that once unified the region before being overtaken by changing climates, migrations, and new powers. Today, the Hili Grand Tomb has been restored and protected, yet it remains enigmatic. It is the work of a people who understood the land, shaped stone with precision, and honored their dead, but who left behind no lasting voice, only architecture. Not every trace of the ancient world fits neatly into the narratives we've written. Some artifacts refuse to be categorized, explained, or even fully seen. They speak in materials we can touch, but meanings we can't grasp. A scroll burned shut, a tomb with no name, a star map drawn by hands that shouldn't have known the sky. What links them isn't their shape or age, but their silence. Each one holds a question suspended in time, a challenge to everything we assume about the past. Were they warnings, offerings, declarations, or something we no longer have the language to interpret? Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what these artifacts are, but how much we've already forgotten to ask. If these stories moved you, stay with us on this path through the forgotten and the unexplained. Subscribe to uncover more lost knowledge, like the video if it left you wondering, and share it with others who love a good mystery. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. And when you're ready, there are more stories waiting across our channel, each with its own unanswered question.